Welcome to another podcast for Growing in Grace. Growing in Grace podcast. Glad to have my uncle and my friend, Gregory Adams. Was an officer
Yes, sir.
of DeKalb County.
Right.
And today we want to talk some about the relationship with our citizens and police officers.
Right.
I remember when I was a child, at school, we used to have Officer Friendly.
Yeah.
Come to the school, and they were trying to mend the relationships and cause the youth to have a positive relationship with officers.
Right.
And we see now that we, in our communities now, there seems to be an adverse relationship with officers, and we even had recently the situation where they talked about defunding police.
Yeah.
However, they were saying that some kind of way, but it was a negative mark on police officers.
Yes, sir.
And I think that we're in a time now that we need to recognize that it would be a bad scenario for us not to have authorities.
That's right.
And people who regulate and keep things in law and keep citizens under, I would say, how would you say, subjection? I don't know if that's the right thing to say, but to regulate and make sure laws are being enforced. I say law enforcement.
I think the term would be civil.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want civil behaviors between the citizens and the law enforcement. And you're absolutely correct. I served about 4 years with DeKalb, 4 years with Emory Police Department, and then I finished off with the Sheriff's Department, DeKalb Sheriff's Department. So I had a total of 12 years of law enforcement experience with 3 different agencies.
Okay.
And DeKalb County, in fact, most agencies now have what they call community policing, where they get involved with programs within the community to bring to bridge the gap that's between the community and law enforcement. So having the experience of being a law enforcement agent and knowing what's going on in the world, in America particularly, how the George Floyd incident that took place, the Breonna Taylor incident took place, and sometimes you have overzealous police officers. You really do. And sometimes the badge is a shield for some to exceed their authority. But that's just a small percentage of officers that are out there that are like that. For the most part, every officer that I've ever worked with is very civil, and they work towards trying to bridge the gap in the community and to protect and serve the citizens.
Yeah, yeah. I could say this, that I know they had the George Floyd and the Breonna Taylor, and we had people who were speaking about defunding the police.
Yeah.
And I could just think about it for myself. I said, now what would that look like? What kind of community would that look like where you didn't have a police officer that you can call or a police service that you could depend on? I mean, what city would you like to live in that didn't have a police service?
Not a one. Not a one. Contrary to the thought, and I'm a historian, so I can go back to history. And the police department, the Department of Police, came from England. And if you know anything about it, they never carried a gun. They always carried a stick. But it came over to America, and it became a force to keep slaves under subjection. So that's why you had the police department, the police here in America, so they can go out there and run away slaves. Then it took a different leg, it took a different turn to protect and serve. So they thought they were protecting and serving the people who own slaves. I'm protecting your property, so I'm going to get your slave, and then to bring them back. But today's police are here to protect and serve the citizens. I think you and I, we've communicated as it relates to the roles that police officers play and the roles that the citizens should play when they're confronted with a police officer. And I tell anybody all day long, listen here, when the police pulls you over, don't come with an arrogance. Like, why you pull me over? Why you stop me? Well, you know you were speeding. You know you ran the red light. Or there had to be some reason for them to stop you. Your tail light is out. Your tag light is not on. Those are what we call probable causes to stop you. That's why you need to make sure that your vehicle is up to par. Tail light, tag light, everything is working so that they won't have a reason to stop you. And then when they stop you, Then if they smell anything out of your car that smells funny like weed, oh, now you've been smoking weed. Or if they smell liquor on your breath, or have you been drinking, now it has created a different, atmosphere, a different environment wherewith now you got to deal with certain things. So
yeah. And so I just like to look at the scripture in Romans, the 13th chapter. It says, let every soul be subject unto the higher power.
Yes, sir.
For there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance of God. And they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same.
Right. Do that which is good, then you have praise. Man, the officer gave me a warning ticket. He stopped me, and I did what I needed to do. I was in compliance to what his commands were. And he just let me off with a warning. But when you come with an arrogance, oh, what you stopped me for? Can I tell you about an experience that I had?
Sure.
Gentleman going down Glenwood Avenue, and speeding, ran the red light. I'm just sitting there. I'm like, I know this dude didn't just run the red light. Right in front of me. So I blue lighted him. That's what term we use. We blue light. I blue lighted him, pulled him over, and I get out the car, and he's sitting there. So I walked up to the window, and he said, "What you stop me for, officer?" I said, "Bro, you just ran the red light. You were speeding." He like, "You didn't stop me because I'm black." I said, "Oh my God, what happened to me?" I must have turned black when I got close to your car. Brother, I'm black too. Don't come out with the black thing. You violated the law. And, I would have just really given him, because there was no heavy traffic or anything, I would have just let him off with a warning. But because of his attitude, sir, here's a citation. Here's sign it. And another thing when it comes down to getting a citation from the officer, don't ever tell him you ain't going to sign it. See, signing it, this is your bail. That you don't have to go to jail. But if you don't sign it, it's automatic arrest.
You have to lock you up.
They have to lock you up then.
Oh, wow.
People didn't even know that. Oh, man, I ain't signing that check. I ain't signing that check. Don't sign it. Come on. Sir, get out the car. Ma'am, get out the car.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I've never had that attitude with a police officer.
Right.
And I think that's why I've had good relations with police officers. In fact, most of the times where I have been stopped, I have been given a warning.
Right.
And here's what I'll say about that. I attribute a lot of that to my mother.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know why?
Come and tell me why.
Because my mother disciplined me to know to respect authority. And so when I have a situation where somebody is in authority over me, I know how to be subject. I know how to be subject. So it's not a stretch for me to be subject to an officer.
Right.
Or to say yes, sir, or yes, ma'am, or no, sir, or no, ma'am, that kind of thing. And that's kind of a Southern thing, too. But it was the way that I was brought up to respect authority.
Right.
So when I have an encounter with authority, I don't have an adverse reaction to authority. So I'm cordial.
Yeah.
I'm friendly. And if I've done something wrong, I'm going to be apologetic or, have a contrite spirit about it. And when that happens, oftentimes the police officer is just a person just like I am, and then they have a heart.
One of the things that they teach us, they used to tell us this in roll call, treat these people like you want to be treated. That's why we were very, careful, particularly to get some of the DeKalb County officers that I work with. We were very careful how we handled the citizens, because we did have a command staff that was very conscientious towards treating people right. And, my lieutenant, Harborough, she was wonderful. She was a female. She was a wonderful supervisor. Sergeant West, different officers that I worked with that had more years of experience before me and who took me under their wings and taught me about being a police officer. You execute the authority. And generally, when we're called to a scene because there's a situation that went on, behind every action will be a reaction. If you act this way, we're going to react this way, and you have to take accountability. And so it's really funny to hear and to know how society has changed over the years. two things that you quoted the scriptures, and I also quote the scriptures. We're living in the last days, and people are heady, high-minded, disobedient, unthankful, and unholy. All of these things are so true today, and they don't recognize the authority of the law enforcement. They don't pay them any attention. They disregard them. Yes, we're human. Yes, we're men and women. And at the end of the day, they want to go home just like you want to go home.
And they have fears and concerns.
Oh, my God. I'm glad you said that. We're going into the abyss, as some would say. We're going into the unknown, so we don't know what to expect. And we get startled like anyone else. But our first response, unlike most people or citizens, our first response as trained officers is to go for our weapon because we don't know what the level of the threat is. So we go for our weapon. That is to protect us. And that we're also trained not to put our fingers on the trigger until we're ready to pull it. So our finger has to go along the finger well instead of inside the trigger. And that's why, it's just a second. A life can be taken. And most of these men and women, they want to go home at the end of the day. I have had officers that I've worked with that have been killed in the line of duty. And over something very stupid, a simple traffic stop. Well, if you had your driver's license up to date, insurance up to date, wouldn't have been a problem. And the person that shot him, we were in the courtroom, I was in the courtroom, and said, well, I thought I was going to jail. Well, duh. You're going to jail now. Now, it was just a traffic citation. Now you're going to jail for murder. And it's terrible for individuals to kill anybody. But it's even harder when you kill a police officer. Because the penalties are going to be much stricter.
Severe.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk a little bit about racial profiling. My brother one time was profiled. He was coming to Tennessee and coming to the church in Tennessee, and he come off the exit, and the little location is in the East Lake community in Tennessee, not very far from the projects, and he had a nice car.
Right.
And he come off the exit. I understand he was going the speed limit. The police officer pulled him over. And he pulled him over. The funny thing is, pulled him over where he stops at is not far from, it's almost right in front of the church.
Right.
It's actually funny. And so, good thing is, my brother and I, we come from the same mother.
Right, right.
She had trained him how to behave too. And so the police officer just talking to my brother, and eventually got around to, okay, well, what happened? Why you pulling me over? Because the police officer had him, then the one cop had him, and then another car pulled up, and there might have been another one that came behind and he said, is that a problem? And, what's the problem? And where you coming from? And all the questions about what he's doing. And eventually they got around to the reality of it that, well, you're in this neighborhood, you're in this car. And so it kind of points toward profiling.
Yeah.
And it says, well, my license, here's my name. That's the church I'm going to right there. Actually, my brother's the pastor of the church. You see his name, you see my license, they had to say, yeah, well, and they had to let him go. And he had them laughing, actually. And he kind of de-escalated the situation. And that kind of turned into a decent situation. But I will say this before I turn it to you to respond to that. His response to it, I think, helped.
Yes.
And if he had escalated, then I think he could have escalated the whole thing. But he was able to de-escalate it and deal with it in such a way to where, it was peace in the end. But what do you say to that?
Do you want me to be real?
I want you to be real.
Okay.
That's what we're here for. We've got to have the real.
Real and authentic.
Yes, sir.
And any southern state, Alabama, Tennessee, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, Georgia, did I say Alabama?
Yeah.
Mississippi. You hear all these southern states, good boy states. If you're black, you are a target.
Really?
If you're black, you're a target. They automatically assume you're guilty by being black. I'm going to speak the truth now. You're guilty by being black. particular white officers are afraid of black men. Black men have this extra estrogen in them. They have this extra strength that they're particularly afraid of them. The prisons are overpopulated with blacks. 70% of the people in jail or that are incarcerated today are black men. And so what the deal is being real, it's the modern day plantation. The prisons, the jails are the modern day plantations. However, because you're black and you're driving a nice car, they automatically assume you are a drug dealer or there's some, illegal practices that you're dealing with. And it's so sad and it's such a shame that we have to deal with this. But this is what has been instilled in their minds against us. See, this is one of the things that we talked about in roll call, myself and some of the other black officers. We talk about this stereotype, how they stereotype us, how they peg us. I was driving my brother-in-law's car. His name is Sam. And he let me use one of his cars. Well, his car is a gray car, an Oldsmobile, and had big tires on it. I mean, hey, man, that thing was clean. And I drove through one of the cities in DeKalb County, doing the speed limit, seatbelt on, the windows were tinted. You can see out, but you really couldn't see in. I got blue lighted. I pull over. Officer gets out of the car, comes up to it. I let the window down and said, what seems to be the problem? He said, I stopped you because you didn't have your seatbelt on. I said, how could you ascertain if I didn't have on the seatbelt when you can't see into the car? At the same time, I passed by you. I was doing the speed limit, so how could you tell me I didn't have the seatbelt on? He said, and he looked, I had my seatbelt on. I never took my seatbelt off. So I reached into my pocket, pulled out my wallet, and I pulled out my badge at the same time. And the only thing he could say to me was, man, you have a good day. See, he didn't know I was a police officer myself. But then I realized I was being profiled. And he assumed if I let down the window, he would have smelled weed. He assumed something negative because he looked at the car. But it ain't just black guys or black men. White men have rims on their cars. They have their cars trekked out. But he automatically assumed or speculated, had some kind of thought that, hey, that's a black guy. He must be into some drugs. And it's bad. And there are black officers that think the same way.
Really?
There are black officers that think the same way. They think negative about us because they listen to the hype that's being propaganda or the propaganda that's being brought forth by white officers.
Well, if that be the case, then it's not really about the color of the skin, then is it?
No, sir.
And I think that sometimes we get caught up into that.
Yeah.
And just like you said, there was a gentleman, a citizen that tried to accuse you,
yeah,
as a black officer of doing things.
Absolutely.
Because of the color of his skin, you got the same color.
Same color. It was funny to me because I'm like, was I white in the car and I turned colors when I'm a chameleon,
Yeah.
What is that the lizard that changes color? The chameleon? Yeah, okay.
That's right.
Yeah, I was a chameleon. When I got out of the car and ascertained he was a black man, I turned black. But then, when I got back in the car, then I resumed my whiteness. Right, yeah.
Yeah, we know it don't work like that.
It don't?
Yeah, no, it don't work like that. But so here's the thing, though. So you believe, as an ex-officer, you believe that there is a stereotype,
yeah,
of blacks or minorities.
There is.
So if there is, what would you teach the minorities to do in those cases?
The same thing I teach everybody, whether it be, whatever their race is, just be complicit to the commands of the police officers and ascertain, and without attitude, why you were stopped, and do your best to comply. As we were talking, I was thinking about Eric Garner in New York when he was choked to death selling a single cigarette by a white officer. And, I looked at the footage, and I was able to see the excessive behavior that was demonstrated by the officer. Now, Eric Garner was a big dude, though. So yeah, the officer put that chokehold on him, and it's unfortunate that Eric Garner died. And I say he died over a cigarette. of a single cigarette, selling it for a quarter or 50 cents, whatever you're selling it for. But I just tell people, just be complicit. Okay, officer, I'll comply. And we can settle it out in court. When we go to court, whatever the case may be.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, and I understand, I agree with you. Basically, what you're saying is where you might think you're being targeted, but your resistance is what escalates it to that bad place.
Absolutely.
And if you don't resist, then perhaps you can see another day.
Absolutely.
Perhaps you can have a legal recourse.
Absolutely.
But when you go to the extreme, or the extreme has taken place, then you don't see that next day.
Believe it or not, you would actually win in a lot of cases. I have been pulled over by a police officer. This was before I became a police officer. And I went to court and I fought it. And he said I did not stop at a stop sign. And I was able to ascertain, yes, I did stop. There was a brown car coming. I didn't know if it was going to turn right or keep straight. So I had to stop because I didn't know what he was going to do. And I explained to him, I said, you were talking to two officers, one female, another black officer. And then I'm coming down the street and you pulled me over and you say, hey, you ran that stop sign. Well, that was my argument. I didn't. Went to court and fought it. I won. Because I was able to tell him. He said, I don't remember that happening. Oh, yeah, I remember very well. This is exactly what happened. This is what you did. This is this. I would say, you got to be able to articulate and explain when you stand before a judge instead of getting up there and start cussing and fussing and acting a fool in front of the judge. When the judge hits that gavel and he said, your fine is this, that's done. But if you can defend the argument between the officer, then the judge may be a little bit lenient with you. And that is so true. People just don't understand. And I want to go back to talking about defunding the police. They were talking about defunding the police and talking about them getting sensitivity training. Police officers are properly trained in every aspect. We have certifications in counseling. We study psychology, so we can study the behavior of individuals. Do some of them forget the training? Absolutely. Do some of them get comfortable in doing what they do? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, to talk about defunding the police and not giving them the funds in order to hire more men and women to get out there and serve, and the pay has to be decent enough because police officers don't make money. When I started in policing, it's really funny. I first looked at it, the pay was $19,000.
Really?
$19,000 a year.
Excuse me.
The pay has gone up since then, but
wait a minute. What'd you say now? You said it was $19,000.
Pay was $19,000
for
to be a police officer.
Not for 6 months.
No, for the year, $19,000 a year. It went up, and they brought him in at 32. Then it went to 36, and so and if you have a degree, you make more money. But yeah, you're asking a man or a woman to put their lives in jeopardy for what I call peanuts. When you take, who is that, the football player, Deshaun Watson, who just signed a $200-something million contract to play football. And they only play, 16 games a year? If they make it to the playoffs and make it to the Super Bowl, then it supersedes. But you look at the amount of money that they're making per year, and people pay for entertainment, but they don't want to pay for safety. But there have been many times, this is true, I have been called to drug dealers' houses or locations who got robbed by other drug dealers. And
they want protection too.
They want protection too.
They want you to protect and serve them too.
They want the same level of protection. And I'm like, man, here they came, man. They robbed me of my money, man, and I took my drugs. And I'm like, brother.
So they telling you.
They telling me, I'm like, brother.
What are you supposed to do as an officer when a drug dealer has been robbed?
I got to do a report. That's it. So you got to write the report.
Okay.
And I was not called because he was selling drugs. He had gotten robbed. He's still a citizen. And I treated him just as though he was a citizen that had been robbed of his merchandise.
Okay.
And of course, I gave him some counseling on top of that. I said, never tell another officer, because some of them can be, oh, you're a drug dealer too? Then they'll put the cuffs on you. Me, I was called here for this. I'm going to do this. And I gave them a little advice. And, because they said, man, you cool, man. Yeah, I am cool. Yeah. I'm cool. But I was not a ticket Nazi, and I was not one who was always ready to arrest anyone, whether it be black or white or whatever. But it depends on the severity of the situation. If it's an assault, yes. If it's domestic, yes. Whatever the case is, if it warranted me to arrest someone, then I would. Outside of that, if I can counsel with them and get the problem resolved and they can walk away amicably, then I'm fine.
Well, and actually that's another thing about police officers. I've had some very good interactions with police officers.
Right.
And what I mean by that is they do help.
Yeah.
They do serve. They do go out of their way to provide service and actually some of it I think is outside of the scope of their job duties. I think it's a part of their humanity that some of them serve, and they've helped tires to be changed.
Yes.
Help with children, abandoned children, and things of that nature. They've gone above and beyond in many respects. And I think that sometimes you can just have this one view of a negative thing that happened, and that's on billboards, on every channel, and all of the good things that are done, you don't hear much news about that.
You know, what you just said just made me reflect, and those were the things that our departments do, and we have in DeKalb County, we have a dynamic new sheriff, Melody Maddox, and she's doing so much with the young people in DeKalb County. She's doing mentoring. She is taking them up under the wings and educating them. So I got to take my hat off to Melody. Our police chief, Ramirez, female, she's doing great things. The agency, every agency that I've worked for, Emory, we have Santa Cop, where we buy toys for children who are in impoverished situations. And all of us take our funds and we do it so that the children can have a decent Christmas. You know, things like that. They want toys like everybody else. And it's called Santa with a Cop, that's it. And, you know, so there are so many wonderful things that law enforcement agents do across the nation. You know, even in those deep southern states, they still do things in certain areas. And don't ever put all the officers in the same basket.
Yeah.
All of them are not bad.
Right.
You know.
Right. Like, it's always bad when you do that.
Absolutely.
When you name a group of people and you say they are this way. So it's always bad. In fact, every group ought to hate that. Who would want to hear somebody say black people are a certain way? All black people are not the same way. White people are like that. Well, you can't say that.
No.
You can't say that because you don't know all of them. You don't know all blacks. You don't know all whites. You don't know all Hispanics. And you don't know all the police officers. And so you can't lump them all together and say that they're all a certain way.
Right.
Because you wouldn't be speaking the truth.
No, you wouldn't.
You wouldn't be speaking the truth because they're different. They have all different types of characteristics. And then you start looking at how police officers protect and serve, and you look at the statistics, and you look at all the stats of over the years, all of the incidents, over all of the calls. You've got a very minor situation that's happening.
Right.
You understand all of the calls.
I understand.
And then how many incidents that have come to light to say that police officers are negative and bad, and the calls or the things that have happened to say we ought to defund the police compared to all of the calls.
Yes.
I mean, about how many calls would you surmise? You probably don't know because you don't work in the call center.
No.
But just a guesstimate of calls per night, per county, or for your department.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't.
You don't work in the call center, but I'm just, it's just that has to be a significant number.
It's a large number, and because police officers don't respond to every call. You're talking about the calls that come in. They go into the call center. That goes to the non-emergency numbers where they have to do certain reports, various reports. And we have classifications of priority: priority 1, priority 2, priority 3. Priority 1 is murder. Priority 1 would be domestic. Priority 2 is a home invasion where with the person that came in already stole what they're going to steal and they're gone. That becomes a priority 2, and it can be bumped down to priority 3 if any other priority calls come in. Armed robbery, those are priority 1s. So and people, well, I called y'all over an hour ago. Well, somebody broke in your house. Okay. We have somebody that just got shot. I understand you want us to come and do a report about what was stolen, your VCR and television, but we have to respond over here. And anytime there is a shooting, you're going to have multiple units get out there because they have to, rope off the area. And then they have to look for evidence. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're roping off the area, then they call the crime scene, then they call the detectives, so that we have to maintain the area so that nothing can get disturbed. And that's why you see so many units out there, because that's exactly what they're doing. And people, they're always trying to guess and wonder, but there's a whole lot more in law enforcement than just a man or woman riding around in a patrol car with a badge on their chest. It's a lot more forward to it, and that's what we try to educate them.
Yeah, and sometimes police officers are judged severely. I know, like in football, they call it the Monday night. What is that? Monday night quarterback?
Yeah. It's called Monday morning quarterback.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's not Monday night. It's Monday morning quarterback.
We're basically where they play the game on Sunday.
Yeah.
And then all of the people who sitting at home, they can tell the quarterback everywhere he made a mistake, what he should have did, how he should have thrown it, and who he should have thrown to. But in the game, if they were the quarterback in the game, they probably wouldn't have performed as well.
No.
But after the fact, they can tell all of the things that should have been done.
Yes, sir.
And I just would like to allude to, you're aware of the situation with the gentleman who was shot in the Whitney's parking lot.
That was here in Georgia?
Yes, in the West End community. Where he was drunk, and he was in his car at the drive-through, and the police officers were called, and he ended up fighting with them, and overcame 2 police officers. He beat them up pretty good. I saw video of it.
Yeah.
And took the taser.
Yes, I know.
And aimed the taser. You're aware of that?
I saw the footage. I'm very familiar with the area.
Can you speak on that? And I think that there was just a verdict recently about those police officers and what should happen to them.
Well, they were fired. One was fired. The other was not.
Yeah. But about the criminal prosecution and all of that. But what do you think about that situation where the gentleman was treated well initially? Well, actually, it was a pretty good interaction. But then he didn't want to go to jail. When he got ready to go to jail, well, he didn't want to go back to jail.
He had just gotten out.
Yeah, so he didn't want to. He didn't go back. He didn't want to go back to jail. So he started fighting, and he actually was winning. He was winning, and he took the officer's taser, and he aimed it at him and pointed it at him. What do you say about that? Well, he was shot.
Yeah, the guy. The story is, and I was not on the scene. In fact, man, I was still a police officer at the time, and when that took place. So of course we sat and we discussed and we looked at the video footage, and it came up in roll call to how it went. The young man had just gotten out of prison, the jail, whatever. He just gotten out of prison, and he didn't want to go back. He was inebriated. He was drunk. He pulled up in the windows, and he was sitting in a parking space. Someone said he was at the drive-thru and he fell asleep. What I saw, his car was not in the drive-thru. Officer came on the scene. One of the employees called the police. They came to the scene and they confronted the guy. The guy said, "Hey, my mother lives down the street." He said, "I can walk there." He was not driving, so he was not driving under the influence because his car was parked. They could not cite him for driving under the influence. They wanted to arrest him. One of the officers wanted to arrest him for public intoxication. Well, let me explain to you about public intoxication. His behavior has to be disruptive in order for it to be classified as public intoxication.
So just because a person is drunk and sitting in the public, he can't be arrested for
He
being
can't be
drunk.
arrested for public
Just sitting
intoxication.
there, he can be arrested for
He
that.
shouldn't be and could not be.
But
But
if he's acting out,
if he's acting out, and this young man was not. Now, remember I told you how we have this extra testosterone. Let's say estrogen. Please forgive me. We have this extra testosterone in us. And so this one black man prevailed over two white officers. Remember I said how white officers are afraid of black men because of the strength that we have. And that's it. Not all, just a few. I'm not going to put all of them in the same basket because some of them just as strong as we are. However, when they confronted him and he prevailed and he took the taser, my experience, I would not have shot him. The taser only sends 25,000 volts into you. And all you're going to do is freeze up. You're not going to die from it.
okay, all right. So, all right, let's have a little conversation about that.
Okay.
So, say you have somebody take your taser, shoot you with it, and you freeze up. Now they have an opportunity to take your real weapon, though, right? What about that? What about that scenario?
Well,
Because actually, see, what it is I just think that something about that is dangerous for the criminal to have your taser and aiming it at you. And if they actually did hit you with it, you know, what could the outcome of that be?
whoever hits you in the leg, okay, yeah. We have a bulletproof vest. It's a Kevlar vest. You can shoot it, but it really ain't gonna penetrate that vest.
Okay.
Now, if you hit him in the hand, maybe so. But this guy, he would not have come to take the gun from them. His focus was, I need to get away. You don't shoot fleeing felons. He was not a felon. So he was shot in the back. Now it becomes murder. It really does become murder at that point. They can say, okay, when he shot a taser at me, a taser is not a lethal weapon. A gun is a lethal weapon. A knife is a lethal weapon. But a taser is not classified as a lethal weapon. So I said me. I wouldn't have shot him.
You say you would
I
have?
would not have shot him.
Okay.
I said I wouldn't have shot him because he shot the taser at me.
Yeah.
You got two of them now. So he only shot one taser. So you have two officers. Now the other officers, neither one of them were knocked out. So they could have subdued him a little bit better if he had tried to come to take the weapon. One could have pulled his gun at that point.
Yes.
See, it's two on one. And that's why I said I wouldn't have shot him. When I had a partner, we had our separate units, but we patrolled the same area. So when there's a certain call, he's always going to be there with me, or I'm going to be there with him whenever we dispatch. So I'll make you laugh, maybe. There was a lady, she was something else. She really was. But she kept telling me how handsome I was. She said, "You're handsome, you're handsome." And I'm like, okay. Said, "I want to kiss you." I said, no. And she overpowered me, so to speak, and she kissed me. My partner,
As an officer.
Yeah, as an officer. I was in uniform. And I was just trying to help her, and she's just so carried away, talking about how handsome I was. And I'm like, I don't know what you see. You need my glasses. You know, that's what I'm saying. But she kissed me. Well, that was classified as assault. Yeah, unwanted touch. So she had to get arrested. I felt bad, but hey.
Oh, you arrested her?
Well, I didn't arrest her. My partner arrested her.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
My partner arrested her because it's classified as unwanted touching, and it's also considered assault. So therefore, she got arrested. But it's funny. You find certain things that people get arrested for. Can be something very stupid and silly. Because I didn't get offended by it, but she wasn't supposed to do that. Yeah. It's just like being complicit to your command. As a father, you give rules. You expect your children to adhere to them. Well, we're the same thing. We're the authority. You quote it in the book of Romans. You know, we're not here for a terror. We're here to protect and serve. Right. But you got certain individuals that say some bad things about law enforcement agents.
Right. And actually in the scriptures it also says that for he is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid.
Be very afraid.
For he bears not the sword in vain. For he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. That's Romans 13:4.
And that scripture is so necessary, and I would say it is rightly divided, because it's supposed to be applied in that fashion. And a lot of times people frown on certain individuals doing certain things. But if you don't have men and women, and I say it like this, men and women that fear God and love God, then you're going to have a problem. But when you have someone that has the reverence of God in their life and the concern for humanity, then they're going to do everything they can to take care of the people. It's crazy because, I'm a preacher. At South Precinct in DeKalb County, there were a total of 12 preachers that were police officers. And all of us we would pray and we'd go out and we'd ask God to cover everybody while we're on our shift and then keep us throughout the evening. And there have been many situations that I personally have been in that if it had not been for the Lord on my side, if it had not been, I don't know how it would have went. And someone asked, well, would you do it again? Or did you enjoy it? I enjoyed being a police officer. I enjoyed protecting and serving citizens and communicating or connecting with the community. Take children up under my wings, That was just things that I did, and I enjoyed doing it. I have other children now that I adopted as a police officer because their fathers were absent, and they needed someone to talk to, and I gave them my number. We talked, we communicated. If they needed something, they would call me, and I would go and help them out. And that was just my heart. I just love helping people be better citizens.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, it starts at home.
Yes, Well, that's what I say.
Yeah.
I credit,
Your mom.
my mom for a lot of me staying out of trouble.
Yeah. Well, I do the same thing. I credit my mom and my dad because I had the reverent fear, not a tormented fear. And my mother was very specific. If you go to jail, son, you're going to be in there because I ain't getting you out. And that's the same motto I use to my children today. If you go to jail, call and let me know where you are so I won't be worried. But you're going to sit there because if you did the crime, you're going to have to do the time. Now, if you went to jail for the gospel's sake, then yeah, I would be, in agreement with getting you out. But if you went there because you shot somebody, you sold drugs, you stole something, but you're going to sit there. Because I don't support that type of behavior, period.
Right.
I don't care who it is. My own children, they know. And it wasn't because I was a police officer. I just have certain principles, certain things I just ain't going to go and do. I'm not going to steal from nobody. I ain't going to go and kill nobody just for the note of it because I'm mad at them. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to disrespect those who are in authority because now being a man is a man. Don't ever get them misconstrued. But there are certain ways that you can do things. And that's what I always tell them, hey, y'all just work with me while I work with you.
Yeah. So what advice would you give parents to all children, really, about how to deal with police officers, authority figures? What advice would you give?
And the first advice I give to parents who have little children that are acting up in the store and the police come in, get them, officer, take them. Don't scare them. Don't intimidate them with us. That really irks me when a parent does it. Look, why would you do this? We're trying to give a positive image. You're trying to give a negative image. You control
like
your child.
Boogeyman.
Yeah, like on the boogeyman. Woo, police. No. And the children are all afraid and petrified. And no, don't do that. Secondarily, you teach them to respect law enforcement. You may have had a bad experience, but you got to think about what did you do in order for your experience with the police officer to be bad. Think about what you did. Because again, behind every action will be a reaction. See, so stop doing wrong and expect to be treated right. Do right and you'll be treated right. You notified us or we saw something that caught our attention and we need to investigate it. Outside of that, parents, talk to your children and let them know that the police officers are here to help, not hurt.
That's right.
We're not, even though the scripture talks about how we are a terror, but we're a terror to evil works.
Not good.
Not good works. If you're doing good, you ain't gonna have no problem. And there are officers that ride through community, see kids out there playing basketball. They'll get out and play basketball with them.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Right.
They say, hey, man, you cool. That's what the guy told me. He said, man, you cool. I said, yeah, bro. I'm just like you.
Yeah.
I just wear a badge, but I'm a man just like you.
Mm-hmm.
I was young just like you were at one time.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So I know. And police officers are great people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they can be the best friend that you ever have.
Mm-hmm.
And just don't treat them bad and disrespect them. And for God's sake, don't think about defunding them.
It'd be a plea for my sake too.
Yeah, don't
For our sake.
Yeah.
That's gonna put us in a bad position.
A terrible position.
It put us in a terrible position. In fact, if you defund the police, I think that most people have moved away from that thinking because it doesn't make a lot of sense, actually. In fact, the people that will be hurt the most from something like that, if somebody still wanted to think in that way, is the minorities.
Yeah.
Because they are minorities and poor. Because people who have substance, they can hire protection.
Absolutely.
In fact, some of the people who were chiming in on that have protected services.
Yes, sir.
They have protected services. And it's kind of ironic to me that some of the people that would say that, they would have protection for themselves, but then they're advocating for other people not to have the police officers.
Right.
So that's kind of ironic to me.
Well, you know, I appreciate this opportunity and this dialogue to talk about law enforcement because that's one of the things that's really near and dear to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, having served 12 years in law enforcement and worked for 3 different agencies, 2 police agencies and 1 the sheriff department. And my experience gives me the opportunity to try to enlighten and educate individuals that police officers or law enforcement agents across the nation are really designed to help and protect. Jim Crow is gone. Mm-hmm. Racism still exists. Mm-hmm. And it's crazy, believe it or not, but there are blacks that are racist just like whites. Yeah. And they're racist towards blacks. Mm-hmm. If you run across someone like that, don't treat them bad, don't be disrespectful to them, always be complicit to their command, and maybe things will turn out pretty good for you. But at the end of the day, always respect the law enforcement agent. Yeah. Yeah. Speeding, slow it down. Everybody speeds. Mm-hmm. I raise my hand. Mm-hmm. But it just goes with the territory. Speed limit is 65 now. Mm-hmm. And since I'm talking about that, there is no grace.
There's another 5. There's not no 10 miles.
There is really no grace. Speed limit is 65.
75. I mean, you can't just 74.
You're going with the Florida traffic. Go with the Florida traffic.
Oh man.
Go with the Florida traffic.
I love grace, man. I love grace. Come on, man.
Go with the Florida traffic. If you're going with the Florida traffic, we're not going to really mess with you. They're not going to mess with you because I'm not in the unit anymore. Yeah. They're not going to really mess with you. But if you just feel like you need to go, you got the need for speed, then guess what you're going to get? A speeding ticket. Speeding ticket, yeah. But, and here's another a guy, I was on 285. Mm-hmm. I was doing 75. Mm-hmm. Speed limit 65. Actually, it was 55 then. But
okay, that's a big difference.
That's a big difference. I was feeling with 55 then. It just went up over the years, but I'm doing 75. Mm-hmm. And this guy passed me like I wasn't even there. And I'm in my patrol unit.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
I'm in my patrol unit, and he just zoomed. So I'm like, wow, I don't have a radar. So what I did is I caught up with him, and he's doing 85. So I'm doing 85. Now he didn't pass me. Mm-hmm. So I had to clock him a half of a mile. I went a half of a mile. At which time I blue lighted him. Mm-hmm. When I blue lighted him and I pulled him over, he said, "What you pulled me over for?" I said, "Man, you were speeding." I said, "You passed right by me like I was almost standing still, so to speak." Mm-hmm. And he said, "Well, I got to get to work." I said, "What time you got to be at work?" "I'm already late. I overslept." I said, "That's not my problem." Mm-hmm. I said, "Call your boss, you're going to be extra late." Because you were speeding. Now, what if you had hit someone at that rate of speed? What if you had a blowout at that rate of speed? You could have killed yourself. You could have killed someone else because you lose control of your car. Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't. I said, "All right, here's this ticket." Yeah, because his lack of concern, caused me to write him the ticket. One reason he was gonna get the ticket regardless, because there's a speeder law. It's called super speeder. You're doing 85. Speed limit 55. Let's do the math. Let's see, 85, 55. How many miles is that over?
85, 55, 30.
Super speeder.
Yeah, and here's the other thing to that, is that you've been to the accidents. You've been to the accidents where the speeder or the out of control driver, whether he was under influence or whatever that was, you've been to some of the horrific scenes. Is that
Horrific. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
yeah.
Lady was driving on the cell phone. She dropped the cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
And she tried to bend down to pick the phone up. She overextended the wheel. She was driving an SUV. SUVs are top heavy.
Yeah.
It flipped and flipped and flipped. This was a terrible scene. And she was, her arm came off first. Then her head came off. Because the windshield came in, cut her head off. I'm not telling people not to drive. I'm telling them, put your phone down while you're driving. Don't try to text anybody because you're not paying attention. Get on 285 or 85 or 20, wherever you see all those folks always on the phone, they're texting and driving or whatever. It's dangerous. It really is dangerous. And that lady lost her life, and all the witnesses that saw or who were able to see said she was on her phone. And we found the phone, and whoever she was calling, they were still on the phone through all of that.
Really?
And that was a terrible scene. I've seen some stuff, and it really touches my heart to see people lose their life. It's an appointed time. People will leave here, but why die before your time? Why do things that you know that are not going to be feasible or good for you or have a good outcome? That's why, I always tell people, and when it rains, people be driving so fast when it rains. All you need is just a little water to get up under that car, and the car hydroplanes. It don't have to be a whole lot. And people think, oh, I got this. Nobody can control rain and water. Water goes where it goes. But if it's a certain way it hit that car, your car hits that water, you lose control. We're trained on how to do that. And even we, in our patrol units, still lose control. Yeah. Well, it's called evoc. So we go and we're taught to how to spin the car and how to maneuver. Police officers are properly trained in every aspect. And if you talk about defunding, then you talk about taking away the funds that are needed for them to get the proper training, even if it's sensitivity training. Well, if they get that, it's a 20-hour course, and that's a year. 20 hours of training a year for that type of class. Okay, it's good. But sometimes you leave out there and you confront it with real life situations. That training just went out the window. Because now I got to bring this person down. And always, and this is what an example that they taught us in training, and that said, when you meet the individual on the same level, how you doing, Mr. So-and-so? How you doing, ma'am? You're already there. When he or she goes up, you have to go up above them. Because if you lose control of your authority, then you lose the situation. So when they go up, you go up. And you always got to be, okay, now you're bringing this out of me. Because you went here, I had to go here. So
and so really, let every soul be subject unto the higher power.
That's it.
For the power that be, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God.
That's it.
Romans 13:1.
Yeah,
I've enjoyed this conversation.
Yes, sir. Well, I have too, and thank you so much for the opportunity to come and talk. Because, like I said, that's something near and dear, and my family that's always around me know how I feel about law enforcement agents, men and women. And to be honest, they don't make enough money for what they have to go through on a daily basis. So I think the pay needs to go up. I'm not asking for $1 million for them, but I am asking for a decent salary for them to live. And so, it's good that you chose this particular topic for this empowerment class, this session that you have. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Appreciate you. God bless you.